What's up, everyone? It's Wacko. Welcome you to my draft recap of SDS Season 9. This season, we did a randomized draft. Well, it was like half randomized. We got 5 randomized picks between tiers, like a high, or like a top tier, a high tier, mid tier, a lowish mid, and a low tier. And we had to draft around those 5 picks. Some people end up getting a little bit more screwed than others, but others got very lucky and got like the perfect teams, I swear. And then some of them, like, they had the perfect team and then used their rerolls anyways. So that's interesting to see because I'm sure it's not going to be a very smooth season, but here's the hoping that it'll be a smooth season without people dropping back and forth. I know, like, I think I like my team, so I should be fine. Um, Other people, I'm not really sure if they like their team, but I will say it's kind of made for a little bit of chaos in terms of like the fairness that people had going into the draft because some people really had to work around their picks, and I will say I'm one of them, as you'll see. Um, and I didn't even have it the worst either. I probably had it like the second or third worst. Um, so yeah, very interesting to see. Very interesting concept. Um, I will probably not do this again, but um, if it goes smooth, maybe. So without further ado, our first pick after I'm done yapping. Our first randomized pick, we actually got Roaring Moon coming back from SSDL from last week. Um, so yeah, I haven't drafted Roaring Moon since like November 2022 when the mon like first came out, and like right as people were like, oh, this mon's like not that amazing, and I think I put it at like 17 points. Back in season 4. This season it was 16 points. I think 16 is like where it kind of belongs, to be honest. Um, but it's a very good mon, I feel. It just has a little bit of shortcomings and like not a lot of utility. It does get taunt, and since the last time I used it, it got knockoff, which I think is very nice for Roaring Moon. Um, it's still very fast with U-turn. It can still use photosynthesis to boost its attack or speed and just end up cleaning games with Dragon Dance because it's very fast. Um, Problem with Roaring Moon is some of its weaknesses are a little bit much, and its physical defense really can't handle a lot. It kind of dies to like a lot of U-turns and has to worry about like first impression. Um, but I think that just shows to how much like the bug type has come. Um, since just a few generations ago. Like Roaring Moon, this thing would have been broken like 2 generations ago probably. Um, but still pretty good, and I'm fine with randomizing this as my first pick. Um, but with our second pick, we end up getting King Gambit, and I'm like, oh shoot. Well, here's my double dark because I actually did like a little speed tour before the draft started like a few weeks ago, and I ended up with double dark there too. Either it was double dark, or I think maybe I had like double fire, but it wasn't very good for me. It adds another fighting weakness, and I don't have a steel type that can handle fairies with this pick. I would have preferred if this was like a Melmetal, even if it was still weak to fighting. At least it would have been a fairy resist for Moon, or even a bug resist, which would have been nice. But we end up with King Gambit, and I'm personally not a fan of like having to click Sucker Punch, or I don't know. I just think Dark Steel's like not the best typing. It does have a lot of resistances, but some of its weaknesses are a little bit much. I know it only has 3 weaknesses, but I feel like ground fighting is like too much for it to handle sometimes. Because there's so many mons that get like a low kick. Um, King Gambit isn't the best at taking like special hits like Moonblast and stuff, but it can take. I feel like there's a lot of times where King Gambit just eats like close combat for some reason. Um, so it's not too worrying, but I guess we'll see once I start using it. This is a mon I can't even reroll because my next pick is something I've already had to use both my rerolls on. We got Glade. Originally, Glade was a Gudra, and as you can tell, like, I already had Double Dark. Then it would have given me Double Dragon. I could have rerolled Roaring Moon, but the issue with Roaring Moon being rerolled is I would have ended up with a different dragon or a different dark, pretty much, because that was kind of all that was left in tier 1. There really wasn't that much left for me, and even if I did reroll something else, like, it would have just been something that already had a spot on my team. So Roaring Moon stayed. Gudra did not stay, and then I rerolled Gudra into Clodsire, and I'm like, you know what? Clodsire gives me spikes and T-spikes, but this mon is super passive, so I ended up trading it again, and I got pretty, I'd say, lucky, because Glade ended up letting things fall into place for me. And Glade is another mon I've been wanting to try for a long time. It would have been really nice if I could have tried this with Terra, but I do think, like, this would have been Terra banned. Like, it would have taken a couple unbans from Terra for Glade to even be allowed. Because it was pretty low tier Terra, Glade was above, like, the point threshold, and I think even if the point threshold was raised above Glade, like, Glade probably still would have been Terra banned. Because the monster's really good with, like, agility, sharpness, plus Terra. Sharpness in general is just really good for it. And I'm very happy to get Glade because I think it's a good mon this gen. So I guess we'll see how well I can use it. I've never used Glade before. I've used Mega Glade, but that was like 3 years ago, and it's been quite a while. But I think I can make Glade work. It was 9 points, and I'm not too worried about it not showing up to do stuff, you know? Our next randomized pick was Rotom. This was one I was considering re-rolling, but I also want to consider re-rolling King Gambit. However, because it took me 2 rerolls to get a mon as good as Glade, Rotom is staying on the team, and it is here to stay. And I'm not too mad about it. This was a tier 3, so I could have rolled this as my tier 3, but people are like, you know what, I think Rotom is like an 8-point mon, which made it fall into the tier 4 range, and I'm like, okay, I think Rotom is like a good budget pick, even though I really do not like Rotom as a mon, and I typically don't like to see both of my water killer types in one mon, but I do think this mon is good. I've seen Rotom pop off for plenty of people multiple times, and I guess now is its time to do that for me. I don't think I've ever used Rotom before. I've used Heat. I used Heat Wash a couple times, both of them. I've used... I don't think I've used Fan. I used regular Rotom for like half a season. I used Rotom Frost for like half a season. So it's just Mo and I think Fan. I've never used Fan before. So I guess I'm a little bit excited to see Rotom Mo. It is, I think, one of my favorite Rotom forms, like design-wise. I think the Lawnmower is just so silly. Yeah, I like Rotom kind of, not really. Our last pick ended up being Lurantis. This is our tier 5 and our last randomized mon before the draft started. I was not super happy to see Lurantis on my team. I would have preferred not a grass type, but I also would have preferred not a dragon or a dark type. Anything else would have been fine. Even like Granbull or like All Creamies, like a low tier fairy. I would have rather had those. But instead I have another grass type. And even another grass type with Defog. I was going to Terra Captain this, but this season I allowed for 2 Terra Captains unrestricted, other than the Terra tax and like the Terra bans, which is like anything above 10 points pretty much. So I could have, like, you could Terra like the Dunsparce and like Stack Attacka or something, which would have been over 20 points, but because of the rule change, you could literally have like 25 points for Terra, which is, I think, like the most anyone could really get anyways, because I didn't allow that many good Terras to exist in this season. But Lurantis, like, I was like, yeah, I don't feel like using this as a Terra. I'm sure it could be good, but I think Lurantis thrives more in like a low tier setting than anything. But I don't know. I already have Rotom. It does give me another water killer in case I don't feel like bringing Rotom, but I also don't feel like Rotom is just better in most cases unless I need like the pure grass type to deal with things because Leaf Storm might be a little bit not as good, but I do think Lurantis will probably come to like A game. And it can do stuff. It's a little bit different than Rotom, but functionally I'm not really sure if it's gonna slot over anything else on the team. Without further ado, our first pick is getting rid of Lurantis. Our first actual pick of the draft, though, is Landorus. This was a mon I actually randomized for myself. I was between Landorus, Galarian Slowking, Deoxys Speed, Landorus Therian, and I forgot who else. Maybe like a Mega, maybe Ursaluna, low key. But I ended up with Landorus, and it's been again like 3 years since I've used Landorus. Um, Actually, I think I used Landorus on the same team as my Mega Glade, so it's been about that long, like mid Gen 8. And I think Landorus has gotten better since then, but I'm not really sure if he was worth 17 points. Um, I will say the only reason he was 17 is because Jaden is in our league, and if Jaden sees this mon anything lower than like 17, he will grab it. So I have to like punish that a little bit. That's the same reason why Globro was 10 points for like 5 seasons, because me or Steven would just pick it up. And it's like incentivized us to not use Landorus, but Jaden said he would have picked this up regardless, so I was like, you know what, I'm fine with Landorus. Really good at clicking like Earth Power, and yeah, it clicks Earth Power. Our next mon is Zoro Kasui. This is something I picked up in Grace. Originally I had like Empoleon, I believe. But Empoleon was just kind of there because it was like a safety pick. Since King Gambit wasn't really like the steal that I wanted, and Empoleon offered me another Defogger, another Rocker. But I was like, you know what, Zoro kind of fits like my speed tier that I need, because I actually also had Infernape, and I was like, I don't think I want Infernape with Glade, especially because I already had Double Dark and Double Grass. I like the idea of double fighting, but I just couldn't figure out how to fix my draft with what I had left with the doubles that I already had, if that makes sense. So Zora kind of covered a speed tier as well as another special breaker because all I really had was Landorus at the time. Well, all I have is Landorus like in the higher tiers. And it gave me like, I guess, a ghost type. Normal typing doesn't really matter too much. I guess it matters for like the ghost immunity. Which I didn't really need a ghost immunity, but it was nice to have a fighting immunity. And I think Zoric actually works really well with like Moon, King Gambit, or even Landorus to an extent, maybe even Glade. Actually, I think it does work pretty well with Glade. I think about it, but because of I don't know, Zoric just works with a lot of fighting types. It works decently with some dark and steals as well. And it just seemed like the perfect team to slot Zoroark on. And it's been maybe like a year and a half since I've used Zoroark last time. I think the last time I used Zoroark was right as soon as we found out that its stats were actually different than what we thought. Because we thought Zoroark Hisui was just a Zoroark clone. And it's like a 10-point mon. It was 13 here this season. I think Zoroark Hisui is just better than Gengar. Hence why I had it more expensive. But I can kind of also see why Gengar is considered better still. So I guess we'll see if Zoroark does anything. I kind of see Zoroark flop quite a lot, but I also feel like it has a lot of potential to do other things. So we'll see. Our next pick is actually a Terramon, which I also didn't pick up until Grace. Oh, Stack Attack. We got Stack Attacka. This is a very good Terra Captain. I'm super excited to finally use this. It's been on my radar like since like early last year when I was like, oh damn, this thing has so much coverage. and it can do so much shit. Its only issue is it can not really touch like um, it can't really touch a lot of like fat water types. Um, like I don't know, like Dondozo kind of just sits on it. Dondozo sits on a lot of things, like physically attacking, but it struggles to do a little bit of that. But a lot of the other mons on my team also help break for it, which I think is nice. Um, and it's just a good trick room mon, and it can set up trick room. Even if it dies, I can then bring in like my King Gambit. And if I Terra Stack Attack into a type that like already doesn't beat King Gambit, then even better. So I could like Terra Fairy with it. I could Terra Water, Terra Poison. Even just like going all out on like Terra Steel Gyro Ball or like Terra Fire with Heat Crash or something. I think Stack Attack is just very solid. And I've never used Stack Attack before. It's been pretty close to some of my teams though. And the other important thing is it offered me another Steel type other than King Gambit, so I actually get a fair resist out of this even without Terra. I don't really like the Steel Rock typing as a whole, but the mod is bulky enough to like not really care too much, I feel. Like it's on the same level as like Shuckle on the physical side as how like tanky it is, and it has like twice the HP, which I think is nice. Especially defensive, not as much, but you can kind of invest fully in special defense in some weeks and just like roll with it. Like I think my plan with it, its HP is also low. I might just do like HP, but it has the option, and I think Trick Room is very nice for it. Not Stack Attack. Our next pick was also another Terra pick. I wanted to make sure I had 2 high tier Terras. Originally, my plan was going to be Galarian Slowbro with Lurantis, but I was like, this just feels like I changed the rules to not even abuse it. And I think having 2 good Terra captains is better than having like 1 good one and like 1 bad one, you know? Just having 2 Terra captains that are actually good in general like offers you so much more, because Terra Tax doesn't really signify like how good the mon is with Terra. It just kind of means like the mon is more points because you're using it with Terra, and some Terras are a lot better than others. Like Stack Attacka is really good. Stack Attacka is like probably a top 5 Terra in the league. Maybe. We grabbed Inteleon. I really wanted to get Araquanid, but I couldn't really fit it on my budget, and Inteleon kind of fit. Inteleon gave me like a point higher than Roaring Moon, which didn't really matter, but it's making certain mons run like a teeny tiny bit less bulk, which I thought was like, sure. And in case there's like a week where I can't bring Inteleon, Roaring Moon can come, or like those weird weeks where Roaring Moon just can't do crap, Inteleon can come in and just do stuff. I think it's a really solid Terra. It gets Terra Blast, which is nice. You could even just like Terra Water and just delete things. Like I've seen this thing on like pseudo rain teams, just like one shot like everything, and I think that's insane. And I'm very excited to use Inteleon. It can even run like some sniper sets. I'm not really sure if I'm going to bother running that, because I think with Terra Blast, you can kind of just break through things anyways. It likes to run like Terra Electric. It likes to run like Terra Ice, I think. I'm sure it can do some other crap, and maybe I'll do some cool stuff with it. I drafted it like last year, and I tried running like Swords Dance or like Felstinger with it, and I think maybe it can do stuff, you know. And it's fast, whereas Stack Attack is super slow, so it gives me both options with some amount of speed control, I guess. Again, I did want Araquanid, but it didn't allow me to fit my last 2 Pokemon properly. I needed another Defogger, and you know what? Flor just is back. As I have an SSDL, Roaring Moon and Florges. My next pick is also a pick that you saw pretty recently, but Florges did so much for me in that first week of SSSDL, where I'm like, you know what, this mon like actually isn't as bad as I thought it was, and it can kind of do stuff. For 8 points, it offered me Defog, Wish, Heal Bell, Moon Baton Pass. Just wish passing. I think it's good to like wish pass into stack Attacka. It's gonna, I think, function very similar to like the Flor just plus Mega Aggron combo I have that people have to prep for. I think stack Attacka is just like another variant of that. And in other ways, it might even be more annoying. I think Flor just can also wish pass pretty well into like Roaring Moon or King Gambit. Um, Even like anything, I think you can wish pass in like anything on this team. Um, and very well. It has a decent HP stat where it's gonna give a lot back to most of the mons that are getting wish pass to. Stack Attack is gonna get a lot of health back. Rotom will get a ton of health back. So it's just very nice, and Flor just can do other things too, like Trick, Scarf, and stuff like that. I really wish they gave this thing like Mystical Fire or like Thunderbolt, but I can also see that Flor just being like a 13-point mon with Mystical Fire, because like all it needs is coverage to Steel types, and I do think I have a lot of that with like Glade, Landorus, and just like breaking with Moon and King Gambit. So I'm not too worried about it. I think Flor just has a good spot on this team. Super excited to use it still. Oh, sorry, Flor just. Our last pick is going to be Quillfish. Like I said, another mon that we had in SSSDL, but it rounded up my team super well. They gave us a proper bulky water, as well as a grounded poison, as well as spikes and T-spikes, and just another pivot with foot turn and intimidate. Like, it gave me everything. It gave me everything that this team needed. Because I don't think my hazard game is super great. I do have 3 rockers, but I also don't really see them as rockers that much. King Gambit, maybe. Landorus, maybe. Can force a switch and click rocks. And it also makes my type chart completely green. Or at least there's no, like, glaring weaknesses. I will say this team is kind of weak to Fairy, but I have Terra Stack Attacka, and I have King Gambit, which will usually take a Moonblast and not really care. And I think Quillfish is pretty reliable. Quillfish is the mon that has, like, no stats, but it can come to, like, any game anyways, and it'll probably do something. It's just that type of mon. I considered maybe making it my Terra Captain, but I was like, you know, I think Water Poison is just, like, good on it, and I think I'd rather have a more, like, fast offensive Terra, because Stack Attack is a little bit more slow and, like, setup based. So I think that rounds up our team very well. Lurantis is kind of taking up a slot, but it was only 3 points, and I think we made a very good team out of what we could get. I got Roaring Moon, I think, pretty cheap. I got Rotom pretty cheaply. I will say maybe Glade or King Gambit were a little bit expensive. Landorus was a little bit expensive. Zoro maybe expensive. But Inteleon was 9 points with Terra. Stack Attack was like 11 points with Terra. And I was like, you know what? I think that's pretty solid. And this is, when I first put this on my dock, I was like, yes, this is the team. This is what I'm rocking out with. And I think it'll be fun. I think it might be a little bit tough for me to deal with because it's not that typical. It looks typical to what I would maybe draft normally, but I really don't like 2 high tiers with like the same type and like the same weaknesses. Somewhat, they do cover each other like a little bit, but it's not to like my liking, and I don't like King Gambit or Bisharp, like how they play with having to click Sucker Punch. And clicking Swords Dance and stuff. I'd rather just click buttons. And King Gambit can do that too. I'm sure there's weeks I'll just run like Choice Band or something like that. And be like, yeah, King Gambit's here. He's ready to wreck your Boosty open. And yeah. If you guys have like any suggestions, like what I could do with the rest of my team, I'm not really going to listen anyways. But if you're like, oh, Zoro Kazooie sucks, just get Gengar and then replace Quillfish for like some other water. The thing is though, there's like no other waters that I want to put in my team. And I was like, I think Zoroark just fits better. And I think Zoroark is better than Gengar, so I will take what I can get. And yeah, I will see you guys for week 1. Funnily enough, with the Roaring Moon Florges Quillfish coming back from SSSDL already, like, I'm facing Wisdom, week 1, which is so funny to me. I feel bad for him because he has a really tough schedule, but he'll get over it. Yeah, thanks for watching.